Welcome back to PPF Racing. I'm Chris. Today I'll be building a pellet stove wood burner stand. And this will be a voiceover mainly because it was really hot in the shop today and I had every fan in the shop running, so that's all you really heard in the audio. So I decided just to do this. So we'll get going here. You can see me cutting up some angle iron. This is 2 by 2.5 leg angle iron, offset angle iron, whatever you want to call it. It was 3/16. I am building this for my dad. He just didn't want to tackle it. And this ain't no big project for me. And it'll give you guys something to watch. So here I'm just trying to figure out, make sure I get the angles cut right. Doing 45s for the 90-degree to 45-degree cuts. And then there will be some 22.5-degree cuts to make a 45-degree angle. Sometimes I struggle on getting the right angle cut on the right side of the piece. Like if you got two angles or two different angles, sometimes I really screw that up. Well, I'll have the angles flip-flopped from what they needed to be. And then I'm just checking on the little temple I got, the piece of cardboard, to make sure everything's gonna line up right. Now we'll get it adjusted there to cut the 22.5-degree angle. Alright, now we got everything cut. I'm going to do kind of a dry fit here. See what needs to change, or if anything needs to be recut. I did go ahead and polish all the pieces just to make it easier to powder coat later, because I would not be able to fit this in my sandblaster cabinet. So we'll get it tacked up here. And I'm just tacking on the top side for right now, just in case I gotta, cut off pieces and retack them or readjust them. Makes it easier to get them. And then I realized that everything was a little too tight to fit in the, or for the template to fit. I just didn't add enough material when I was cutting all the pieces out. So I'm just putting a little 1" or 1/8 inch spacer in there, a little piece of flat metal, just to give me my 1/4 inch more that I need. Does make tacking a little bit more difficult, but I struggled through it, got it good enough. And just a little quick check, make sure it'll work, and it did. So we'll continue on. You can see that gap there. I mean, that's not a pleasant gap to try to tack. Now we're just checking square here. Moving it as needed. Now we're just pulling X measurements. Make sure it's as equal and perfect as it can be. There, I just spraying down some canola oil on the table. Worked great for anti-splatter. So we haven't got them little BBs on the table. And we'll get to welding here. I'm just doing a vertical down, just weaving a tight side-to-side weave just to catch both sides. Make sure it's a good weld. And I am jumping around from joint to joint across the part. That just kind of helps with it pulling as bad. I wasn't too worried about it on this, just for what it is. It didn't need to be super critically square. If I was worried about it being real square, I would have tacked the other side of the angle iron. What's sitting on the table right now, I'd have flipped it over and tacked it. But for what this is, it'll be just fine. I am using a .030 wire on a 140 Hobart. Pretty good little machine for light duty stuff. Anything really over a 1/4 inch, you're kind of pushing it with it, but for anything under a 1/4 and under is great. Welds good. I'll get the rest of it tacked up. Going a flat position weld here, going from the outside of the leg in. That'll really help you keep from blowing the weld out, especially on a gap like this, because you're going from a thin part of the metal to the thicker part there in the webbing or the corner of the angle iron. And just doing the same thing, kind of just rotating the part around, doing opposite corner welds. The part shouldn't pull a whole lot now, just because it's everything on the other side of the leg is welded. But it's just good practice. Keeps you from building up heat in one spot. Kind of see me there, the weld hesitating a little bit. That's where the wire's falling through the gap when I'm trying to weave it across both sides. And there I'm just bridging a tack across just to get a good starting point. Now I got a few little pinholes here to fill in on the very corners. Now we'll move on to the legs here. And this is 1x1 square tubing, 11 gauge. So a little under an 1/8 inch thick. And I'm putting 1/2 inch nuts in there. They fit in there pretty good. They were slightly loose, so they weren't setting exactly center in there, but not a big deal. I'm just using that bolt, just kind of like alignment tool to make sure they're somewhat square. And we'll get them all tacked up and weld them out. And we're just doing kind of a stitch weld here, fill in the corners where there's a pretty good gap. Then I did run a tap through them later to clean up the threads. And that'll do it for part 1. Stay tuned for part 2, and thanks for watching.